Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the AE 2020 Virtual Administrator Seminar. It is wonderful that despite COVID-19 and all the effects of the pandemic, that we can still connect with you via technology and engage regarding topics of interest. For those of you who don't know, my name is Bridget Ward. I work at the AE Head Office in the Product Development and Marketing Department. It's my joy to be with you today, and thank you for taking the time to join me. We're going to be talking about online learning and adapting to online learning and how we can go about that and what things we can learn from those who've gone before us and already done it. For several years, we've been part of the global conversation around the desperate need for real and meaningful change in education and how that change can be implemented. We know that the education system was originally designed in the industrial age, and it served in that era, did a good job, but we just haven't seen the change that is necessary to bring us into the current realities of the world. We observe disruptive change brought about by technology in so many different aspects of our lives, but not in education. However, largely due to the pandemic, I would say that now, more than ever, mankind and society is recognizing the real need for transformation in education. There's a heightened awareness that we're not talking about cosmetic changes, making schools bigger or better, more brightly painted, or even putting in smart boards. We're talking about real and fundamental change, change that changes the modeling of education, brings in new pedagogies, new approaches, and a new implementation model for all to follow. What we're really saying is that to be transformative, to really make a difference and move us forward as a society, the change in education must be fundamental. I often wonder why the change has not happened easily in education. As people, we adopted very easily to carrying around a device that interrupts us and invades our privacy. Yes, it does bring convenience, but who would have thought 25 years ago, who would have thought that we would all be carrying a cell phone? And now today, the mobile technology companies come out with new cell phones and new technologies almost every 6 months. But we have just not seen the same progression in education. And we have to ask ourselves why. Why is it not happening? I think that there are many reasons. Many of us still believe in what we have. It used to work, and so we think it should work now. It's also very hard, if we're honest, for an architect to knock down his own building. And there are many of us who have been instrumental in speaking into the way the education process is. And that's a tough one, to realize that we now sit in a place where change is necessary. In addition, making changes on the go, well, that requires a lot of effort, and it's not easy. If you think about remodeling a home or building from scratch on a new open piece of land, I think it's much easier to just start out fresh. So making changes on the go is going to be challenging, and we're going to have to work hard at how we navigate that. Some of us are concerned about the potentially harmful impacts of the digital world, specifically gaming and social media. This is very valid and very important. We absolutely have to take all of these considerations into account as we implement online learning. Importantly, I think it's also difficult for us to imagine what the new education system would look like. Technology is moving so fast, and many of us haven't necessarily kept up with it. So how would we imagine how it's going to look in that space? And so it becomes a little bit easier and a little bit safer to just think about the cosmetic changes and hope for the best. But we have to be honest. In order to be transformative, education is going to have to be changed fundamentally. It's going to require vision. It's going to require a lot of flexibility. It's certainly going to require strategy and planning. And it's going to require bravery and tenacity from some leaders. And I think that's us. We're sitting on an opportunity right now, particularly in Africa, to usher in the changes that education so desperately needs. This quote from the CEO of ISTE frames the issue at hand. He says, education must continue to innovate. The rapid pace of global change means we can't avoid it. As educators and education leaders, we have to empower students to succeed in and create a world that we can't anticipate. Well, this starts to beg the question, in preparing young people for a world that we can't anticipate or prepare for, what can we actually do? How can we help them? Well, we can and must educate them to be positive, balanced, morally strong, educated, critical thinkers. With these attributes and skills, they will be empowered, effective problem solvers, and these are the people who will create the future and be able to succeed in it. We as a community of educators need to take this seriously. For years now, we have known that the research shows us that soft skills are highly rated on the employability scale. And of those skills, the most highly rated are the following: critical thinking and problem solving, teamwork and collaboration, professionalism and a strong work ethic, oral and written communication skills, and leadership. With that in mind, we need to ask ourselves some key questions. I think there's lots of questions around online learning, but I've highlighted 5 for us to think about today. So we're going to talk about what is the role of online education? Is online education effective? Does online education mean that education is now fully automated? What is a hybrid model of education? And how will we adapt to an online environment? So let's start by talking about what is the role of online education. To start, we must delineate the fundamental difference between the digital delivery of content and online learning. As the COVID-19 pandemic hit planet Earth and numerous countries went into lockdown, which included the closure of schools, we saw a swift response. We saw a solid move to the delivery of digital content into the homes of learners. Conference calling technology such as Zoom, Google, Teams experienced exponential uptake from schools. Email, WhatsApp, and various content dissemination apps were effectively used. Slides, videos, ebooks, audio, all of this type of material was delivered into the home of our learners via digital technology. This is the digital content delivery that we talk about. It's not the same as online education. Content delivery definitely has a role to play, but it is not online learning. Online learning is much more than this. Online learning is electronically supported learning that relies on the internet for teacher-student interaction and is also supported by a highly efficient online learning management system and delivery platform. An online learning platform integrates text, audio, video, automated marking, animations, chats, discussions, demonstrations, importantly, individual student monitoring, curriculum, activities, interactive testing, and even assessment. But it's important to note that all of this is built on a structure and supported in the back end by newly devised pedagogies that are necessary and that have proven to work to ensure that learning takes place. When used to its full potential, online education provides a rich learning environment that has shown in some cases to be more effective than face-to-face instruction. Globally, we are starting to see that, like any form of education, the quality will come down to implementation. And at this point, I just want to say there will always be the critical role played by adults who ultimately take the responsibility for guiding young learners through their education and ensuring that the child is nurtured holistically, not just academically. Research, shows us that in order to learn effectively, children need to be happy. To be happy, their spiritual, physical, and mental needs must be met. We are not supporting sitting children down behind computers for hours with no interaction. That is not the methodology of online learning. Unfortunately, it does come with that perception. We are saying online learning is part of a holistic education program, and it will transform the way education is implemented and create greater opportunity for a more flexible program and content that can be more relevant and, crucially, individualized to the specific child. There is no doubt that online education will continue to play an increasingly significant role in the future of education, but it is not designed to work as a complete solution. I have been asked, is there really evidence to say that online education works? Or are we entering into a time of experimentation, and are we going to try this and see if it works? I just want to say no, that is not the case. And yes, the research is showing an overwhelming positive response to the outcomes of online education. Also remember that online education has been around for a very long time. Yes, more so in the tertiary sector. But that's natural. Young adults are more equipped to self-manage and integrate studies into their lives. Our children have been going to and from school on a daily basis, and now they're at a point where they're going to need some help making the changes. But worldwide, and largely as a result of COVID-19, we see that school children are thriving given the benefits of online education. In addition, educators are really encouraged to look at the new pedagogies that have advanced education, from the instructional and strategies that we know to powerful models of teaching and learning, all enabled and accelerated by increasingly pervasive digital tools and resources. This technology is facilitating deep learning, highly efficient measurements and monitoring tools. We're going to talk about this a little bit later, but it's really critical. We're seeing that the measurement tools and the system in the back end of an online learning platform frees up educators from so much administration. And given that, they now have the time to put more emphasis and focus on individual children. And absolutely, on the online learning system, a personal system of instruction is actually the normal. Children can work on individualized content and study at their own pace. What we're seeing in the trends is interventions that develop learning, creating, and doing dispositions that young people absolutely need to thrive now and in the future. This leads us to the next question, and it's a big one. Does this mean that education is fully automated and dehumanized? No. Online education definitely does not rule out the role of teachers and adults, and it certainly does not diminish the important impact of adult role modeling. We know that that is crucial. And in fact, online education opens up new opportunities and new ways of interaction and engagement, and means that more learners will be able to benefit. It is not a shift away from traditional values-based education or the values-based bringing up of a child. Of course, and unfortunately, the perils of digital technology do lead us to ask ourselves, is this wise? Are we making a good move? We have to remember that implemented correctly, the benefits and efficiencies only enhance education. We must remember that learning platforms can be ring-fenced and made much safer than something as simple as the smartphone. We as the adults need to look for the positives in online education and learn how to implement it safely in the positive parameters and in a way where the interaction and face-to-face and connection with young children is not in any way undone or dehumanized. Let's talk then about some of the benefits of online education, and there are many. I hope to highlight some of the more pertinent ones for you today. The first one is obviously flexibility. There's no doubt that technology brings flexibility, and that means greater individualization. Teachers can set drills, content, and even pace of study specifically for different learners in a group. Of course, venue is no longer a success factor. Children at home, for whatever reason, can continue with their work in a seamless way. And this leads to the discussion about accessibility. It is a wonderfully exciting thing to think that we can deliver high quality education to more children in faraway places, and we're not bound by geographical borders, or even class sizes. This is particularly exciting for AEE, given our vision of impacting Africa. The next one is interesting, the continuous improvement due to the nature of digital material. This means that if you do a lesson or children engage with some material online, and sooner thereafter there's an improvement or an upgrade, you don't have to wait for the next publication of that book or for some new material to be delivered. We're able to just go in and on the platform and immediately make those changes and updates. That means the very next child doing the course is benefiting from those improvements that are made to content. Of course, learners can review material and lessons instantly. Someone who wants to go through it just once more and make sure that they've understood can do so. And then there's greater opportunity for research and individual exploration of an idea or concept. Children can pause in terms of the curriculum and the content that they're working on, and they can go and do their own research. This is where the idea of content creation and discovery learning comes in. Of course, as educators, you'll be able to point children in the right direction, give them 3 or 4 places to go and look for specific research and explore an idea or concept. But as they discover that material for themselves, deep learning is starting to take place. I must note that online learning does facilitate group collaboration from multiple venues. So all online, children can interact, they can have debates, they can have discussions, and they can engage in project work. As I said earlier, the sophisticated progression monitoring systems that promote individual attention and success are absolutely critical. Online learning is driven by technology, and this means that as an educator, you will be getting reports, daily updates. You will see exactly which of your children have completed work. Some of it's even marked for you in an automated way. Of course, there will be other elements that you need to mark, but rubrics are provided and guidance in that marking. And then you will also get to see feedback like how learners felt about a particular activity. Learners are able to let you know if they felt in control or happy, or even maybe that they were doing well but bored. They can let you know these things all just by the click of a button. And so you begin to interact individually with each child in terms of feedback and direction. So you might be saying, well, definitely we understand all the benefits of online education, but how are we going to make the transition? How are we going to do that on-the-go adaptation? We know that it's not easy. Yep, this is possibly the most challenging question facing both educators and learners, particularly those who are so used to the brick-and-mortar traditional way of doing schooling. Teachers and parents can feel overwhelmed. They can be concerned about the changes. They can't imagine what the future is necessarily going to look like, and many will worry about the efficiencies. These uncertainties come with change, and by nature, most humans do not like change. I know that I'm wired to seek security, stability, and definitely control. So it is new territory, but we need to acknowledge that to meet the needs, to meet the challenge of that fundamental change, it's going to take some bravery on our parts and some leadership. The good news, it's not an event, it's a transition. We don't just go from A to Z and implement online learning and deal with it like that. It is a process. We can use change management strategies, we can plot a path, and we definitely can and must learn from the early adopters who are currently already enjoying the benefits. But we do need to be deliberate and intentional. It's not going to happen unless we physically think about the changes that are needed and start to implement them. As we plan and to start to make these changes, we need to think about the concept of a hybrid model of education. And let's start by taking a look at this wonderful quote from the new WITS Vice Chancellor, Professor Zeblon Vilakazi. He said, "The future of teaching and learning during and post-COVID-19 should be blended for both online and venue-based implementation." This is a great quote that really sums up the current stage we're in with the implementation of online learning. Hybrid education allows students to pursue a combination of online and on-campus schooling. But the learning must be seamless and continuous despite the venue. So this means that children will be working on a consistent series of activities, content, curriculum, whatever the case may be, and it doesn't matter whether they are on campus or at home. They just continue with where they are at in their learning. It definitely does, the hybrid model definitely does mean a better balance of screen time, as children will be at school, on campus, they will have those normal lessons and not necessarily be engaging in the online lessons, but they will then go back to their computers to do the work and activities. A hybrid model definitely gives flexibility, and at this point we must think about parents. There are so many parents who, due to the need to work, are not going to be able to supervise their children at home. They want them to come to a brick and mortar building where they know that they're safe and that they're with adults who are supervising them and taking good care of them. That doesn't mean that they can't engage with online learning at the school. We've spoken about the automated progression monitoring system, but just to say that that is very much a part of the hybrid learning model. The administration for teachers to keep up with learners who are in different venues at different times would be too difficult if it wasn't now automated. We are in the early stages of a learning revolution, particularly here in Africa. Having worked with a personal system of instruction that is built on personalized and self-paced study, AE-associated schools are well positioned to navigate this transition. We're actually moving towards what we know is essential to quality education and deep learning. It is both exciting and challenging to know that we can define the citizens of the future as knowing, doing people who can function productively in a very complex world. To be proactive about this, we should work on a personal action list. It's all about action. It's all about saying, what are we going to do? What are we going to do in the short term? What are we going to do in the medium term? What are we going to do in the long term to make sure that we bring about fundamental change? So I took the opportunity to put down a few ideas of things that we could all think about and give consideration to as we face this challenge together. We all need to start doing some research and building our knowledge and understanding of the new pedagogies that have been associated with online deep learning. We also need to ensure that we partner with the correct partners, particularly when it comes to technology. The really good news is that AE has already done this. We have a partner in the United States who has been delivering online learning for a long time and looks after entities such as National Geographic, the Khan Academy, and many other well-known and successful organizations. It gives us great confidence that we're not going this alone, that we have come alongside a Christian organization who has learned many learnings and are able to give us good guidance and good support. Teachers, specifically, can start to identify deep learning tasks that have worked successfully in your school and start to think about how those can be digitally implemented. The curriculum team is really on the lookout for tasks that we can build into the learning experience online, and we don't want to throw out all the good of the way you've been doing it. We want to know about those activities and assist you in digitizing them. We also can now spend more time on individual strategies for learners aligned with their personal aspirations and interests. Given our commitment to PSI and to unlocking the potential of every single young child, this is an exciting thing to think about. As we build those learning tasks, we also need to look for more opportunities for knowledge construction, problem solving, and implementation in the real world, and connecting the tasks to students' aspirations. We are seeing that this is a key success factor. When learners are engaged in something that is exciting, relevant to their modern day world, and something that they can contribute to, that they can be part of finding solutions around, or at least be experiencing the solution, it definitely does lead to a very deep understanding of concepts and deep learning. Collaboration is a big word in the online world. We all need to work together, and there will be collaboration with other teachers and stakeholders. And we encourage you to start this process in your schools. Start working on things together. Start discussing concepts together. Start doing research, maybe in a divide and conquer way, that you all are bringing new information to the table. And look at the new technologies that are available. You do not have to be a fundi or an expert with some of these new applications and research and resources. What you do need to know is what's available and how you can use it to advantage learning in your school. At this point, I just want to tell you about a school here in Durban, one of our AEE associated schools, that has already implemented the hybrid model of education and share with you some of the practical learnings that they've unpacked for us. It really is so much more useful to hear from the coalface and from teachers and principals and to some extent parents and learners giving advice in this particular area of adapting to online education. So we've heard from them in their journey, and they've been delivering online learning or a hybrid model using both online school as well as Comprehend Africa, which is our new online learning platform. So they advise us, first of all, do not assume that all students have internet connectivity or access to unlimited data. It's not the case. And I think that when we moved so suddenly as a result of COVID, there were many, many parents that were just caught off guard and really felt at sea with what they needed to provide for their child to keep up with the digital learning. Most parents are happy to provide what's necessary, but they do need to have clear communication and they do need to have time to get it sorted out. So that was one of the big challenges under COVID. And you must also expect that some parents will complain about the cost of data. But if you document those requirements and anticipated costs in your school prospectus, then parents will begin to understand those expectations up front, and I think it will be a far easier transition. Nonetheless, always expect some challenges. Change comes with challenges, but this particular school tells us that as the school started to settle into routines, learners began to settle. As learners settled and the benefits of online learning became apparent, parents also began to adapt to the change. So as I said earlier, it's a process. This particular school was thrust into it, and many of you out there took up the same route, and we call you the early adopters. You were really brave. For those of you who have not yet started on online learning, it's good to learn from them. It's good to hear their stories and their success stories, and it's also good to know that you can do it in a more comfortable, strategically planned way. What about devices? Devices are obviously necessary. Online education is not going to work where there are no devices or there's no connectivity. And I should say at this point as a school, you do need to have a stable connection to implement online learning. With regards to devices, once again, don't assume that all students have their own devices. Many students share devices with their parents or siblings, and that impacts on the amount of time that they have at home on those machines to engage in their materials. We are not IT specialists as schools, but parents are going to expect you to provide clear information regarding the device specs. They're going to be saying to you, you're asking me to buy a device, what device must I buy? So it's important that we are all clear on those specs, and AEE can certainly assist you with that. But it's a good idea, again, to have those specs available, whether it be on your website or in different communication with parents, that they can easily print out or take with them when they go to have a look at purchasing a device. Provide advice to parents regarding content control apps. There's many applications available that can be put onto devices to ensure that they're safer and that what children can access via the internet is safer. That's where the real danger lies, is in that connection to the internet. And there's a lot of technology that can be used to make it safe. Despite that, as a school, you must ensure that you have a digital communication and user policy in place. The AEE policy-wise team can assist you with that. It is very important that you have that on record and that parents and learners read it and understand it prior to engaging in online learning. You must definitely ensure that you have content protection procedures and technology in place at school. And it's a good idea to make sure that you set up the learning center or classrooms in a way that teachers have easy sightlines of computer screens. You definitely want to see who's doing what on the computers. It is advisable for the school to have a pool of devices that learners can use whilst they're at school. It does not need to be a case of a device per learner. Many will have their own devices that they can bring to school, and you will also be rotating in terms of activities and what's happening in a school. Not all your learners will be on devices at the same time. The next thing that we talk about is time management and discipline. Learners, the younger they are going to need time management skills, and even though this is part of the way we currently do education, it is going to be a little bit different for them adapting to online. So they need timetables and they need time management coaching. Start with easily achievable goals. That goes without saying. Build up as learners adapt to that online learning environment. I'm not going to go into the last point on the slide. We've spoken about it, but use that resource of the monitoring and learner progress that is automated for you. Communication. I think we all know that change management 101 equals communication. As we've said, parents are going to be nervous. The only way to really settle them is to communicate well. And if parents are settled, learners are settled. And if learners are settled, parents are settled. So it really is worth your while to plan your launch, to plan your implementation program very carefully and to communicate it carefully. I always say it's better to over-communicate than to under-communicate. And as you start on this journey, really try to avoid any major assessments in the early days of the online learning implementation. Ensure that assessment procedures and dates are well communicated, and it's a good idea to give your parents some training. They don't need to be specialists, but if they have a demonstration or exposed to a demonstration and they can see how the platform works, it's going to help them at least feel a little bit more in control with a little bit of necessary knowledge about the platforms. Parent involvement is going to be critical. Learners need their parents to guide them through the daily programs, especially if they're working at home. Work hard to partner with the parents in that journey. The best way to do this is make sure that you communicate with with parents regarding their specific children. Even if it's a phone call, just because we're going into the digital online learning doesn't mean the good old phone call doesn't have its place. Parents will love to hear from you about the one-on-one feedback and how you as an educator feel their child is approaching the new challenge. It's important that parents are kept up to date about offline activities and learning tasks. This is really important as we still navigate COVID-19. If there's something happening at school that's really important and you don't want the learners to miss it, make sure parents know about that. They may be making decisions at home about whether to keep their children at home or not on a given day. They want to know what the timetable looks like, what the schedule looks like, and if a learner stays at home and continues with online learning, what is it that they're actually going to miss at school that day? And encourage and create opportunity for parents to communicate. They want to feel heard, they want to feel understood, and the feedback from our school here in Durban is that it can become a little bit tedious because you're getting asked the same questions over and over and over again. And as it becomes more comfortable for you and your knowledge grows and your experience grows, some of the questions almost feel irrelevant. But remember, for every parent, it's a new journey, and every question is an important question, and let's encourage that and create space for it. Breaks can't be emphasized enough. As I said earlier, we are not condoning putting children behind computers for extended periods. They must have regular breaks. They must break away from the computer screen. And so your timetable should actually build that in as well. Small breaks, away from the machine, maybe doing a little bit of exercise, having something to drink, just letting eyes be rested. Those are things that you can bring into the classroom environment or the learning center, little eye exercises and relaxation techniques. Build them into your timetable. Make it part of the new routines. And then lastly, what about technology like Zoom, team meetings, and Google meetings, which gives us the face-to-face live contact? These technologies are absolutely critical, and they are part of the online learning experience. What I wanted to communicate to you today is that they are just a part of it. They're not the whole of it. And the online learning management system is what powers the achievement of good learning in this environment. But you absolutely must use these platforms to keep up that contact, particularly when it's when you're not able to meet on site, for example, during lockdown. If you're going to conduct these kinds of online sessions with learners, make sure it's compulsory. Take a roster, and you're encouraged to limit group size to approximately 10 learners. And remember, if it's a time when they haven't seen their peers for a while or they're a little isolated at home, it's a good idea to give them time to greet one another, have a little bit of fun, and just be kids. Some teachers have even at the end of a lesson excused themselves, but let the learners continue online for 10 minutes or so to maybe continue to discuss what they've learned, but also to catch up with one another, hear each other's news, and have that peer interaction. So those technologies definitely play a role. On Comprehend Africa, those of you who are using it will know this, there's actually space in the technology for you to schedule those meetings, to schedule those times, to make announcements to learners on the system. Hey, there's going to be a Teams meeting on Thursday, and we're going to be all doing an oral, or we're going to be having a debate, or we're going to be having an online contact session and lesson, whatever the case may be. On the learner management system, you actually set that up and use these technologies as well. So they do most definitely have their place. That really brings me to the end of my presentation, and I just want to, first of all, thank you for joining me. Thank you for taking the time and listening to me. I really do hope that I've provided you with some new information, some new ideas, but most importantly, I hope that I've been able to encourage you about this journey that we're on and the way that we're going and the exciting benefits that it brings to education. And lastly, I just have put up there a list of references and putting the presentation together. And obviously, this is research that we've been engaged with over some time. Comprehend Africa is our online learning solution that we're offering through AEE, and it's been a long time in the making. We brought the launch forward as a result of COVID-19, which means that not all subjects are yet available, but we do have a good solution available and encourage you to make contact with us to find out about it. But the point here is that if you'd like to look at any of the research that I've referenced in the presentation, you can find that list here. Once again, thank you so much for joining me. Enjoy the rest of the administrator seminar. It's been different, been in a virtual format, but I'm just really pleased that we've been able to connect and look forward to the sessions that are to follow. Thank you very much.